Hello everyone, my name is Roya and today I'm coming to you with the books that I read in the first half of October. October has been a very lackluster reading month so far. The vast majority of these books were kind of just okay, or a little bit disappointing. But anyway, so firstly, I read the three books that are out so far in Elise Kova's Married to Magic series: A Deal with the Elf King, A Dance with the Fae Prince, and A Duel with the Vampire Lord. These are all fantasy romance books that are in a companion series, kind of. Like, none of them actually follows the same characters. You could technically read them in any order. I do recommend reading them in order only because, you know, you miss out on some world building stuff, making more sense and whatnot if you don't read them in order. But for the most part, yeah, you know, they don't follow any of the same characters or anything like that. But yeah, so basically these are all pretty good. You know, they're not bad or anything. I definitely liked the first one so much more than the other two. However, I think that the whole thing just made so much more sense. The romance was way more on point, and the latter two actually just really lost me in terms of the overarching plot making any kind of sense, and the romance being, you know, at all anything that made sense. It was a little bit rushed. I don't know. I just felt like the first one held up so much better, and I really liked it. Really could not stop reading it. I mean, I would recommend checking this series out, but I was just a little bit disappointed, especially after liking the first one so much. I was really expecting more from the second two. And then more disappointing than that, however, was the second and third book in the Kushiel's Dart series. The Kushiel's Chosen and Kushiel's Avatar. Second one was not that bad. I still gave it 4 stars. You know, it was not as good as the first one, but it still held up pretty well. The third one, however, was not that good, and I just kind of wished I hadn't read it almost. So basically, what happens in this series is that I mean, if you remember when I reviewed the first one, at either the end of 2020 or the beginning of 2021, something like that. Anyway, so my main issue with it, really, the only thing that really kept it from being a really good book, was just the fact that the world building was so just a fantasy version of this world. So if you look at the map of the world here, is actually the same. It looks the exact same as our world, with like Europe and Asia and stuff there, but just with the names changed. Not even all of the names are changed necessarily. So it was really like, you can tell that, oh, these are supposed to be Jewish people. They're just given a fantasy name that sounds vaguely Hebrewish and stuff like that. And that was kind of my whole issue with the series. And so for the first two books, that's not that big of a deal because very little of the book is is doing that. And especially in the first book, we spend most of the time in just the one country that it takes place in. But the third book, it spends the entire time in various countries and does that for the entire book. And then when it comes to, I mean, when it's that's bad enough, kind of. That already really takes me out of the story. But when it comes to a people that I am one of and whose language I speak fluently, the made up words just made even less sense to me, like the whole reason for that. So basically what's weird about it is that the Persian people are still called Persians in it. They're not given a fantasy name, which I thought was kind of weird. Only like a couple of different peoples or ethnic groups are not given a fantasy name, but the words for stuff, that were supposed to be all Persian-y were like really made up, and one of them actually does not, it actually does mean something in Farsi, and it does not mean what it said it meant. So it was just really weird to be reading along and going, the Persians call this bloody blah, which means bloody blah. And I'm thinking like, well, it does mean something, but it doesn't mean that. Like, it's not that it meant anything unfortunate. It was just really like weird to me that to hear like, this means this when it actually means something completely different. I'm just not a fan of authors just making up stuff that sounds like a certain country and it's not, and this series just does that the entire time. And finally, The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. I read this mostly just to kind of get it out of the way and get it off my shelf. His books always really shy away from anything adult-ish, even when it seems like it shouldn't. And so it seems almost like Brandon Sanderson is like too pure to put like anything explicit in his books. And so to me personally, that's just not what I'm looking for. So I'm just kind of like, okay, whatever. And it's like, having read several of his books, it's just really noticeable that that's always missing. And from an adult fantasy, you know, I'm always kind of like, really? Like, I don't know. But anyway, so I read this just because I already had this book and I've had it forever on my shelf and I've been meaning to get to it and I just never did. So finally I read it, and you know, there's nothing bad about it. There's nothing like, you know, that I had a huge issue with, but I just didn't really like it because it just didn't do anything different. It wasn't unique in any way. Whereas his other books that I've read before are at least somewhat unique in some way, and that was why I kept coming back to them. But this one really didn't have anything that many fantasy books haven't already done. And not only that, but there is one part where a guy like scoffs at women wanting to do battle, and like, it's 2022. I don't want to read about a main character scoffing at women fighting, like, especially when it's followed up by that would be like a man reading, because in this book, like, only women are supposed to do anything artistic at all, or anything scholarly at all, in parts of this. And so I was not a fan of that being a thing either, because again, I've just seen it too much. It's 2022 and I'm just kind of tired of it. Like, if you want to read about that, or if you want to write about that, a world that has that in it, that is your business, but it's just not really what I'm looking for. So I'm kind of like, all right. So overall, you know, nothing bad about this book necessarily. I just wasn't really into it. So anyway, those are the books that I read in the first half of October. I really hope the latter half of October is a little bit more fun in terms of what I read. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know if you have any thoughts on any of these books. I will see you very soon with a new video. Bye!